a lot of folks on the call. Certainly seems to be regarding coyotes, and we've seen a lot of action on social media and other media forms regarding the vote that the Board of Selectmen took 2 weeks ago. So I'd like to provide a little bit of a recap there, and then we'll get into citizens forum. It's helpful for everyone to have some context for how we got to this point. To make sure everyone is on the same page, I'm going to start by recapping what the town has experienced and how we have responded over the past couple of years. Before I get into that, I want to reiterate that the Board of Selectmen and I, over the past 2 years, have focused on educating our residents on how to coexist with coyotes. We're going to continue to emphasize how to prevent conflicts with coyotes and how to respond properly to interactions with coyotes. All residents, whether you are in support or in opposition of the town engaging with USDA Wildlife Services, you have to understand that we are not attempting to eliminate coyotes from our community. The presence of coyotes in Nahant is likely to continue, and it is our responsibility to follow the guidance of the professionals on how to coexist with these animals. The town of Nahant is currently dealing with an issue of problem or habituated animals. We are not the first town to be authorized to eliminate a problem animal. Again, this is not an effort of population control. This is not an effort to eliminate all current or future coyotes in our community. We are following the guidance of Mass Wildlife, who has authorized us to eliminate problem animals that do not fear human interaction. The town of Nahant has experienced the presence of coyotes. About 10 years ago, we had coyotes in the town of Nahant, and at the time, the community hosted well-attended public meetings where professionals provided information about how to coexist with coyotes. It was very similar information to that of what we have provided recently. Over the past 2 years, the presence of coyotes has increased, and over the past year, we have had multiple aggressive interactions between coyotes and our residents and their pets. We have had multiple pets taken by coyotes in our community, most of which were not under the direct control of a human being. And therefore, we've had to engage with a lot of residents and educate them about the biology of coyotes and the behavior of coyotes and how to prevent those types of conflicts to occur. We've educated our residents on the importance of eliminating food sources for coyotes, and we've educated them on the importance of keeping your pets under your control and how to interact with a coyote if you were to engage with one. In our community being 1 square mile, it's a little bit of a forced interaction occurring between coyotes and our residents. So they don't have, unlike other communities, coyotes here don't have much room to be not interacting with our residents. And so that's why it's extremely important that we continue to emphasize the responsibility of our residents on how to interact with coyotes when you see them. Follow the guidance that Mass Wildlife and other professionals have provided us. It's listed on our website, and I will show that in a moment. We're going to continue to work with Mass Wildlife and other professionals in the future to really emphasize that importance. When 2 years ago, when coyotes first started to show up again in the town of Nahant, it was, we've come a long way from that. I think at that point, our residents were interested and curious and, tended to almost like take a picture of a coyote or not haze it in any manner. And then over the last 2 years, we've engaged with Mass Wildlife to share the importance to our residents that is the improper way to act. It's our residents who are walking, whether you're walking a dog or not, on a regular basis. When you are out in our community and you encounter a coyote, it's extremely important that you attempt to haze that coyote, not only for your benefit, but for your neighbor's benefit. It's extremely important that we maintain that approach so that coyotes that live in Nahant have a fear of human interaction. And in that, if we can establish that, then we can coexist with them. As I mentioned, over the last 2 years, we've had professionals from Project Coyote present public forums. We've had Mass Wildlife biologists present at public forums. We've held multiple public meetings, and it's been an agenda item on the Board of Selectmen's meetings almost consistently over the last 2 years. We've worked with Mass Wildlife to develop a website. I'm going to share my screen in a moment. We've distributed almost 1,000 whistles to our residents. We've distributed almost 500 pocket air horns to our residents. We developed a mailer postcard titled Mass Wildlife's Recommendations for Coexisting with Coyotes. We sent this to every household in the community, and on this postcard is a QR code that you can scan that would bring you to our website where we have additional information. We've done robocalls. We've put signage out and around our community, and I want to share my screen and show you the website and other things that we've done over the years. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so this is nahant.org. When you go to our home screen, right here on the front page is a picture of a coyote, titled Coyote Information. If you click on this, it brings you to our website. Most other communities will have a link that brings you directly to the state's website, but we felt it was important to have our own community-based site for our residents to be able to research on. And the first thing we have here is we developed a matrix of coyote behaviors and recommendations on what a resident can do in those types of behaviors, how the town will respond to those types of reports, and if we are filling out an official animal control officer report and then submitting it to Mass Wildlife. We have this separated in non-aggressive behaviors and aggressive behaviors. For example, if a resident cited a coyote or heard a coyote moving through the area, we've suggested they contact the animal control officer or contact Mass Wildlife. We have information that we can provide them. And in that scenario, it's not an aggressive behavior. So we're educating our residents on that and determining whether or not we're going to be filling out a report. In that scenario, we would not. As behaviors become aggressive, it enters into a different category where if it's immediate, we're saying contact Nahant Police Department and we'll be dispatched to assist you in that moment. And then they are reporting that to our animal control officer, who will then respond to you to get more information about that event. We'll be filling out a report and sharing that with Mass Wildlife. If you continue to scroll down, on Wednesday, July 6th, we Dave Waters, who I see on the call, joined us in a community meeting that was well attended and full of excellent information. That the link to that video is right here on our website. Below this video, we have a link for Coyote facts and info. If you click on that, it'll bring up common, frequently asked questions. This document was also developed with the help of Mass Wildlife. This document helps educate residents about the behavior of coyotes, how to prevent interaction, how to interact with them when you do interact with them. Talks a lot about what the town can and cannot do. Below that, we have a link to Mass Wildlife's mass.gov website where you can find a problem animal control agent. So the town looked into finding a problem animal control agent, but residents could also hire a problem animal control agent on their own. If you click on this link, it brings you to mass.gov and it allows you to search for problem animal control officers in your area. Below this, we have a lot of information that we got from Mass Wildlife that we felt was really important to kind of highlight on the website, because as over the past 2 years where our residents were fearful of coyotes and not really unsure about what to do and what could the town do, we really wanted to educate them on why the town of Nahant is not in a position to control the coyote population. We've done a lot of education with our community about that. So while we have a lot of residents in town that are afraid of coyotes and wanted the community to act to reduce the population, we were responding to that by educating them as to why we were not in a position to do so. There is no hunting allowed in our community. There's a bylaw in Nahant that does not allow the discharge of firearms. But even if that wasn't the case, there's a state law that does not allow you to hunt within 500 feet of a structure. And Nahant being so dense, there really isn't anywhere in town that you would not be within 500 feet of a dwelling. So essentially hunting, which is the main act of controlling a population, is not allowed in Nahant. There is a legal regulated hunting season for coyotes in Massachusetts. It's just not allowed in Nahant because of how dense we are and because of our bylaw. Trapping is allowed when you have a problem animal that you're trying to deal with and you're authorized by Mass Wildlife. And that's when you reach out to a problem animal control officer to engage in that activity. We looked into this issue or this potential option, and the issues we realized quickly was that many problem animal control officers in our area do not engage in the form of trapping because the only legal trap since 1996 is a large box trap, which coyotes are very reluctant to enter. You also have to repeatedly bait the trap in order to get them somewhat comfortable, which can lead to creation of problem animals. So not only is the trap ineffective and not practical, but a lot of problem animal control officers don't engage in this activity because of that. And according to Mass Wildlife, over the last 10 years, only 3 coyotes have been trapped in that trap in the entire state over the last 10 years. So it's an extremely ineffective method. Relocation, when you're dealing with a problem animal, which the town of Nahant is, you are not allowed to relocate that. So we've gotten a lot of comments from folks and concerns saying, why don't you just relocate the animal instead of eliminating it? When you're dealing with a problem animal or a habituated animal, you're not allowed to relocate that to some other community and essentially hand your problem off to someone else. It's not allowed. It's not allowed. So that's not an option. And then there's lethal removal. The lethal removal option is local, state, and environmental police have the ability to legally dispatch a coyote. Our police officers are not wildlife professionals. They are not equipped with the proper equipment to take this on. And as I mentioned, the town of Nahant is extremely dense, and so not a viable option for us. If you continue to scroll down the website, we also provide information about the three main components to preventing conflict with coyotes, removing human-associated food sources, and aggressively hazing coyotes and protecting your pets. And there's a lot of information here about all three of those items. Lastly, here we have a link that brings you to the mass.gov website related to coyotes, and there's a ton of information available for folks here. And then lastly, we developed a hot zone map where we basically, from where a lot of the reports came in that coyotes were being seen on a regular basis. These are areas that tend to have a little bit more open space in our town. We developed this to let our residents know where they're commonly seen, and we put out signage that looks like this in these areas. Again, the QR code is right on that sign, and the phone number to our police department is right on that sign. So these signs are distributed across the town in those areas to help people understand they should be on high alert, and there's a QR code where they can, immediately get to our website for more information or do so later on. So I really wanted to show, I think a lot of the comments that we were getting after 2 weeks ago, our vote was, the importance of doing these things instead. Dave Waddles is on the phone, and I'm sure he'd be happy to comment on the fact that the town of Nahant has been doing a lot of those things. And over the last year, early in the spring, the town of Nahant had 3 separate events where animals were taken by coyotes. Actually, the first event was a pet was bit by a coyote while on the leash. That pet did not survive later on. The other 2 events were pets taken directly off of a leash. Those events were reported to Mass Wildlife, and at that time we were authorized to attempt to dispatch those problem animals. At that time, the town looked into those methods that I talked about, potentially hiring a problem animal control officer, and looking into the trapping option. And as I mentioned earlier, we realized there was a lot of hurdles or ineffectiveness in those options. While we were going through that, a lot of the aggressive behavior had somewhat diminished or subsided. We weren't getting, over the summer, we didn't get as many, we didn't really get any reports of aggressive behavior. So at that point, we felt it was possible that those problem animals had left our community. And then in the most recent couple months, we've had multiple reports again of aggressive behavior where groups of coyotes were surrounding residents at different times while walking their dog. Luckily, those attempts by coyotes were unsuccessful, but they were aggressive events towards our residents. So we reported those to Mass Wildlife. And again, Mass Wildlife said, okay, you have animals here who are comfortable approaching human beings in order, and probably more so in an attempt to take the pet, not to attack the human, but comfortable enough to approach your residents, and you need to deal with that problem. So we once again discussed the options that our far limited, and started discussing the potential of signing an agreement with USDA to come in and help us with this problem. And that's the vote that we took 2 weeks ago. So again, what we're doing with USDA is very specific to dealing with problem habituated animals that are aggressive towards our residents, trying to prevent what happened in the spring or worse. This is not an attempt to control the population or eliminate all current coyotes or future coyotes from our town. Most 99% of our effort, 99.99% of our effort is focused on educating our residents and on how to coexist with coyotes. We are, it's very likely that we're going to be living amongst coyotes in the future. And we strongly believe that the responsibility is on us and our residents to take the guidance from professionals and learn how to coexist with these animals, because they're likely here to stay. With that, I'll ask Dave, if you want to add to anything I just said.
Yeah, sure. A couple of things. The behaviors that you're seeing in Nahant are not typical for coyotes. We do not get these reports of attacks on dogs on leash, packs of coyotes surrounding and approaching people on the street. That is not something that is typical in Massachusetts. Attacks on dogs in backyards, attacks on cats that are unsupervised, off leash. Those are common behaviors. And unfortunately, it is natural behavior for the coyote. So in those circumstances, we try to educate the pet owner that you have to be responsible for your animal. But that's not what's happening in the hunt. You know, these animals are showing zero fear of people. And the actions that were proposed and offered to the town are to prevent to resolve a human health and safety issue. And that's what it is. I do want to compliment the town. I do not know of a single town in Massachusetts who has done as comprehensive a job as Nahant in trying to educate and work with their community, and provide the amount of information, the hazing tools that you have to your community. And so you have done everything you can to try to resolve this issue through non-lethal avenues. And again, I just do want to stress that this is an attempt to remove these animals that pose a public safety threat. There will be an expectation that next year, if a coyote comes down the causeway, that you will be coexisting it. We won't just grant you permission to kill coyotes because they're a general annoyance or people are uncomfortable with them around the community. But to resolve a public safety threat, we do feel that this is the best course of action.
Hey, Dave, Gene Canty, just one question. What brought us to this point?
To this point, it is the behavior of the coyotes, and that they pose a human health and safety threat, a threat to the public. It is an attempt to prevent someone from being bitten and injured by a coyote. In Massachusetts in recent years, the vast majority of bites of people have resulted from intentional feeding by people in that community. The other bites are, generally speaking, the results of someone trying to protect their pet, trying to protect their dogs. So in circumstances where a coyote is attacking a dog, the person tries to defend it and they end up being bitten and injured. With the behavior of coyotes approaching people that are walking their dogs, clearly with the intent to go after them, there's a very high likelihood that someone could be involved and bitten in those circumstances. Or, you know, when they're approaching these dogs on leash, that someone intervenes and they end up being bitten and injured. So it's an attempt to protect the people of Nahant and the public safety. And in this circumstance, we are placing the health and safety of the citizens of Nahant ahead of the coyotes. Again, we're not going to eliminate coyotes in Massachusetts. The division has a very strong record of supporting coyotes. We consider them a valuable part of our natural ecosystem here in Massachusetts, and we have some of the most protective laws and regulations about coyotes anywhere in the country. But we are going to prioritize human health and safety over the animal in these circumstances.
Thank you, Dave.
I also want to state that we, over the last 2 years, we've worked with Dave on hand in hand with our animal control officer and the selectman and myself on how do we investigate reports that come into our community about interactions with coyotes. The reports that we're submitting up to Mass Wildlife are not reports of, social media comments or hearsay type of scenarios. These incidents are being investigated by town officials in direct contact with the person that's had that interaction. And we're asking very specific questions about where were you? What time? How many coyotes? How close were they? Did you have a pet? Where's your pet on a leash? Did you attempt to haze the animal? What was your hazing technique? How did the animal respond? Very important information that Dave taught us was important to gather. As I mentioned earlier, we've been dealing with this for over 2 years now. And I would say that a majority of those incidents that we've investigated resulted in non-aggressive behavior. They resulted in behaviors that didn't meet the threshold that would authorize the town to eliminate that coyote. And much of the time, it resulted in us educating the resident on the difference between those types of behaviors. And so I say that because I want the public to understand that the town has been very diligent on filtering through the reports that we've received, and that the decision recently to attempt to eliminate these problem animals was not done just because of a public fear or because of a nuisance or unvetted reports. These are legitimate situations where we are put in a position to, guided by Mass Wildlife, to attempt to prevent what happened in the town in the spring or something worse. So I think that's important to say as well. Any other member of the board want to say anything before we get to public forum?
I'll just say thank you, Dr. Waddles, for joining us tonight. And Tony, that was an excellent recap of the history and the education attempts we've made, and very well presented. So thanks.
Yeah, I would second that, Josh. And again, Dr. Waddles, thanks for not only for joining us tonight, but for the years of service that you provided us. We really appreciate it. Just, Mr. Chairman, I noticed that there are a lot of people joining us tonight. So before we get into Citizens Forum, I just wanted to remind people that this is a residence forum. And when you speak, if you state your name and your address, we'll be listening to residents of Nahant. Unless the chair feels otherwise, I think that's the way we should go.
I would just like to add that this is, and we've talked about this so many times, it's not a long-term solution. It's a stopgap measure. It gives us an opportunity to take another look at this, to dispatch the very coyotes we're talking about that are in existence right now, and to be able to continue to push the program Tony's talking about. Tony has done a fabulous job with this. So with that, I would say we're on the right track.
Okay, so we're going to get to Citizens Forum. Again, keep in mind that this meeting is going to end at 8:30. So keep your comments to 2 minutes if you can. We want to try and hear from everybody. Just either raise your hand or in the chat, let me know your name and address, I will call on you and ask you to unmute. I don't know if if we're going to have time to engage in a ongoing discussion with each commenter, but we will, this meeting is being recorded and we will be taking all those comments and questions under consideration, and we'll do our best to get back to you at a later time. Okay, so first on my list is Francine.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Just quickly want to recognize two people that are on the call. We have Katie Nolan from In Defense of Animals, which is a national organization, and Renee Secor from Project Coyote are also on the call with us, and Rebecca Dimitrick, which is terrific. Okay, couple points, and I'll try to make this really quick. If the town is going to go ahead with a really bad decision,
Francine,
in that it is going to leave us, yeah?
could you just
Can you
State
hear
your
me?
name and address.
like
Oh,
name it?
I'm sorry, Francine Amari Faulkner, 295 Nahant Road. So if the town is going to go ahead with this decision, which is basically going to make things much more difficult when we come back to then have to deal with a partial fragmented coyote unit where now you've got a dominant pair fractured, and you've got potential juveniles left, and now you've got another coyote pack moving in from some other place. So there's going to be all this upset. So I'm repeating that, to let our coyote expert from California come in, work with what we've got for a couple weeks, see what happens. So if the town is going to go ahead with this pretty severe plan, and basically you don't have any plan going forward with how you're going to educate the public and have a fine mechanism in place. So there are reasons why people don't repeat the behavior that's caused some of this problem. Okay, so that's one thing. I understand all the work the selectmen and the town administrator have done with trying to educate the public, but it's not working. People are not going to the website, and most of the education has been left up to residents. We need a more proactive program in place to educate residents, and that's what the experts from California would also be bringing to us. Okay, so the other really important thing I want to bring up is our team has mapped all the police reports in the last year. And what we found is that there's really no facts to persuade that there's an actual public safety threat. There's no humans were ever attacked. Most of the calls were falsely claiming. There was even a poster put up that claimed humans were attacked. There were never any investigations done about these claims, none that we could find. So Tony and the selectmen, I know you said there is, but we cannot find any information. Where is this information that were actual investigations? There was even a 911 call that reported several coyotes had rabies. The police never found anything. So these are just false claims that are fueling the hysteria. And we're questioning, is there really a public safety threat? I personally have chased 4 coyotes off the baseball field. They exhibit fear. There's no question they didn't run from me. I did that to reinforce you need to stay afraid of people. I did it to protect them. There was no problem with them running from me. 4 of them on more than one occasion. So what I'm wondering is what substantiates Mass Wildlife's claim that this is a public safety threat? And I'm not pointing the finger at Dave Wattles, but what I'm suggesting is that he's been given exaggerated information, and that's what everybody's reacting to. It really does come down to public education, and we need to really, really do a great job at that. But it's got to be more than what's being done, because what's being done is not working, and it's creating hysteria. Okay, so where are the substantiated reports and what has really been investigated? There's been no bites on people. And in the spring, you have to remember they have pups. The behavior is going to be different in the spring than it's going to be, later on. And like you even said, in the last 6 months, there's been nothing. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. Thank you.
Francine, Jane Canty, if you would check the Nahant police report, 2 weeks ago, I'm sitting in my living room watching a football game, and I heard all this screeching and almost like the sound of a baby crying or screeching. And I looked out, I thought I heard a human voice. I said, I've got to go check this out in case somebody's out there and there's a problem. There were 6 of them. And they were in a frenzy. It took me a while to to use the terminology, but they were in a frenzy. I went out, I started up my driveway, they backed me down in my garage, and I went in the garage, called the police, and the police came and dispersed them. That is not good behavior.
Okay, thank you. Margie, I'm trying to find you on here so I can unmute you. Parisi?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, if you could state your
So,
name and address.
My name is Margaret Parisi, 15 Prospect Street. Now, how do we know that the Coyotes territory does not go into Lynn? Because according to the state has video cameras along Long Beach. They see coyotes coming in and out all the time. So how do we know how their territory?
Dave, do you want to attempt to speak about coyote territory?
Yeah, we don't necessarily specifically know, exactly what their territory is, but clearly a portion of their territory is Nahant itself. It's a distinct possibility that they're using the causeway because coastal environments provide a lot of natural food. As things get washed up on the shore, that's a place where they could be just one of the places that they're feeding. It may be the reason that they're using the causeway. Whether or not they're spending time in Lynn as well, they very well may be. But I certainly think that it seems that the majority of these animals' time is on Nahant itself. I did want to comment, just about the spring. There's no question that the spring, when they're in defense of the den, it can be a time where they are more aggressive towards dogs. You're also approaching the mating season right now, which January, February into March is the mating season. And that is another time of year where we tend to see much higher levels of aggression towards dogs and larger dogs at that time as well, as they see those, they interpret those as threats in their territory, just like they would another coyote. So, these aren't isolated necessarily to a certain time of year, just in terms of that argument.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Candace Cahill.
Hi, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please state your name and address.
This is Candace Cahill, 20 Rollins Avenue. I do have a question for Dave Waddles. When you talk about, or when they talk about luring the coyotes in order to, whatever word you want to use, eliminate, how do you know that you're taking the aggressive coyotes and not just a hungry coyote? What is the plan? And this is also for the Board of Selectmen next year when the coyotes come back. And I'm assuming, Dave Waddles, and I apologize that I don't know all of your background, but when my understanding is coyotes have a family unit, and if you disrupt that family unit, you're kind of really opening up the possibility of having other coyote families come in from outside this territory. So I guess that's a concern to me, what exactly we're doing there. That's really my question.
Sure. The first point you brought up is one that unfortunately is is valid. There's no way to determine which animal is the one that is the offending animal. You know, we're talking about responding to behaviors that happened earlier in the year, behaviors that have now continued into the fall, where you've had large groups of coyotes that are being aggressive towards people, you know, at least 6. There were estimates that there were 12 animals. I heard reports that 10 and 12 animals were seen on the beach and in different locations in town at different times. That is likely a mated pair, as well as some pups from last year, and then the pups that were born this spring that are now nearly fully grown. If it happens to be that the mated pair is removed, those pups are going to be the ones, again, they're nearly fully grown. They become sexually mature at a very young age. They're going to be the ones that are going to establish a territory or maintain a territory in Nahant. The fact that Nahant is isolated, relatively speaking, compared to other portions of Massachusetts, it's less likely that animals are going to be moving in, you know, freely as you would in mainland Massachusetts, if you will, where it's a more open system to coyotes in interaction. I've heard this argument said that, you know, it won't be effective to remove these animals. If we were trying to control coyote numbers in Nahant, for example, you'd be exactly correct. If we remove these animals, transient animals immediately come in and the pack becomes reestablished, and essentially the population rebounds very, very quickly back to the same level. We're not trying to do population control here. It is trying to remove these animals that are posing a public safety threat. But you are correct. Unfortunately, there's no way to immediately identify those aggressive animals. So it will be removing a number of animals, perhaps then waiting, seeing if the behaviors reside. And if they do, then there's no need to continue with any action. If they are maintained, there may be a plan to remove more animals. But the plan, again, as Tony has stated before, and as we've stated in the past, it will be imperative that the people of Nahant take our messaging seriously, take the same messaging from Project Coyote and the other folks who have provided information. Never, ever provide any food towards coyotes. So you're not habituating them and having them associate people with food, act aggressively towards them, haze them. So these animals that remain or animals that come to Nahant don't develop these aggressive behaviors in the future.
Thanks, Dave. Peter Barba.
Yeah, Pete Barber, 22 Emerald Road. First of all, I want to say thank you to the selectmen and to you, Tony, for all the work that you've done. I think us having our own town webpage dedicated to coyotes is really important. I know you've been working with Mr. Waddles for a long time, and I'm sure others. I really know that this is a difficult decision for the selectmen to make. I've known, you know, all 3 of them, and I don't believe any of them are, you know, want to go out and just, you know, hunt coyotes and kill them. I do know that a lot of the, I have to disagree with Francine. I don't believe that while there may be some stories that get exaggerated, I think that there are a lot of stories out there. I believe there's 50 or more domesticated animals that have been taken. The ones you mentioned earlier on leash, but many of them that, hey, I have 2 cats and they're old and they like to try and escape from the house. So it happens. I think that this is a public safety issue. I applaud the selectmen for making this decision, and I hope that the townspeople can learn, to start hazing or continue hazing. I agree with Francine. We should have some sort of bylaw or some sort of ticketing system that if you get caught feeding a coyote, it's a $100 fine and a $500 fine and so on to curtail people from putting food out, because I believe that people have even mistakenly put food out for, maybe a neighbor's cat or something. Any type of food like that is going to, draw coyotes in and give them extra food. Maybe we need to do something with our trash barrels to make our trash barrels a little bit more, protected against them. So I think there's still more work that we can do, but I think for the time being, taking out the aggressive animals right now is a public safety. And again, I thank the selectmen for their decision. Thank you.
Thank you. You brought up a bylaw and trash barrels. We do have a bylaw related to how you handle food waste and feeding and preventing the unintentional feeding of animals and the intentional feeding of animals. It's something that we're looking at with town council on potentially strengthening and presenting at the upcoming town meeting. So we do have something in place, more to do there to strengthen it. And, I know that I will say that our residents have come a long way. I think that, what once was, and not just residents, town staff and officials have come a long way too. What once was, a community that we had a lot of leash law issues where a lot of residents were not, keeping their animals on a leash, where we had, maybe some illegal feeding or unintentional feeding of wildlife that led to feeding of coyotes. A lot of that has diminished over the last couple of years. And even to the point where, 2 years, a year and a half ago, when we got a call or a report about a coyote issue, a lot of, we were criticized a lot about just saying there's nothing we can do. We've grown from that, and we've learned how to respond to those things appropriately and educate our residents. So I think that, our residents have come a long way on eliminating those food sources, and our officials have come a long way on educating residents. I think that remains to be our main focus going forward as well. And for those professionals who have offered their services to help us, I hope that they remain committed to our community and help us in the future to do even more. We did vote at the last town meeting. We voted to invest in recycling bins for all of our residents, and we have implemented that, and it's helped a lot preventing pollution and unintentional feeding. The Board of Selectmen and I have talked a little bit about doing the same with trash barrels. So that is something that we might be pursuing at an upcoming town meeting as well. Emily Potts.
Emily Potts, 114 Pond Street. I have a question that is related to this, and that is about bird feeding. Will we ever be, and this is maybe for Dr. Wattles, will we ever be able to feed birds again? Because last summer when I quit, maybe in the spring, the mosquitoes came back in force. And that seems to me to be sort of a health problem in this area. And I just wonder what the implications are of if we stop. Do we have to stop it forever?
I am responsible for managing black bears and coyotes and a lot of the species that cause a lot of conflict with the public. And food around our homes is the driver of that conflict. Coyotes will eat birdseed, particularly suet, but they will eat birdseed as well. But it's also all the animals that they attract, the rodents that come in and eat the seed on the ground. That is their natural prey base. So they're going to be eating the squirrels, the chipmunks, the mice, the rats there. So it's that secondary feeding is probably the worst part for coyotes rather than the birdseed itself. If we were talking bears, it would be the birdseed itself. But it's difficult for me to say, and I understand the joy that people take from bird feeding. It's a conversation I have quite often with folks. I understand your concern about mosquitoes as well. It's just, unfortunately, food around your homes is the big driver of this issue. It really is. If you really have to feed birds, you know, trying to do everything you can to prevent the seed from getting on the ground is going to be the big thing. So if there's a way that you can have an elevated bird feeder with a pan or something that catches the seed, prevents it going on the ground so that coyotes can't access it, that it's not attracting rodents, you know, but it's in being diligent about cleaning up any seed that does fall. But unfortunately, bird feeders are one of those attractants for drivers of this type of conflict.
Thank you.
Okay, so those are the residents. If it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, we do have a couple non-residents professionals that are requesting to speak. I'd like to give them a moment of time.
Tony, I did see Ms. Hall with her hand up.
Oh,
She's waving.
I don't have it on my. Oh, here we go. Let me ask, please unmute, name, announce your name and address, please.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Hall. I live on 73 Wharf Street. I want to say thank you for all that you've done. Just your recap gave me actually a lot more information. Even though I've looked at it, it was helpful to see. And just to, you know, reiterate that we all have been thinking about this and not, you know, it's not just a sudden decision. I know that you guys have put a lot of time and effort into that. And so that was mainly what I wanted to say. Also, secondary, I love my birds. I do feed my birds. But I have a ton of rabbits. I have the explosion of rabbits in other wildlife that we didn't have as much before, which I'm concerned about because we don't have the raccoons, we don't have the other, it's like, seems like a very imbalance to our ecosystem now at this point, and maybe something that Dr. Wattles can speak to. So I don't know if that plays a part in the fact that we have a much smaller food availability for them as well. Now that like I used to have raccoons, possum, skunk, fox, woodchucks in my yard. I don't even see those. All I see are rabbits, squirrels, of course, because I do feed the birds. But you know, it's crazy the loss of other wildlife because of the larger population of coyotes in this area.
In most circumstances, this could be, an artifact of the isolated nature of Nahant, where in many instances, a lot of those animals, like the fox, for example, raccoons, those would be animals that coyotes are going to avoid. And, you know, the fox will avoid coyotes and they can use the same area and coexist, if you will. It may be that in Nahant there are fewer places for the fox or some of these other animals to avoid coyotes, and so the coyotes do have a greater ability to prey on them or kill them as competitors. There's also times where just small shifts in the animal's behavior or habitat use patterns from year to year can make it seem that there are fluctuations in the populations that really aren't there. So I've been in my house for 5 years, and the first year we had fox all over the yard. 2 or 3 years, not a single fox. But if we talk to our neighbor who's out the back corner about 100 yards through the woods, they had fox denning under their deck. They had fox all over the place, and we're seeing them constantly. The past year, we've had fox in our yard again nonstop. So just, little shifts and we're talking, a couple 100 feet. And we weren't seeing them for a couple of years. So it doesn't necessarily, just because you're not seeing them, mean that they're not there.
I've lived here all my life. And I've never had a year where we up until the past 3 years, never had a year where I didn't have some of that going on. So the past 3 years has been none of the raccoon, skunks, opossums. I had them every year since I was a child on
Yep.
Wharf Street. So I live right near the Audubon area, and part of the land that I have has a very wild area that we don't have any buildings. So I'm surrounded by green space, and the fact that I have not had skunk, opossums, the woodchucks were here last year, but they're not here this year. But I had those animals in my yard every year. So the fact that I don't have, it's a remarkable reduction of seeing them. I just have not seen them in the past 3 years. So that to me, that is just indicative of the growth. I guess that's my feeling. And I understand that it does fluctuate and move, but I've always had them. So,
Sure.
And I've never had rabbits like we've had the past 2 years. It's such an abundance of rabbits. They're faster, I suppose, but it's just been crazy. So I feel like that is just, to me, indicating an imbalance.
And you have a large number of coyotes in a very concentrated area. So as I said, they certainly will, they are above those animals in terms of the dominance hierarchy, and will kill those animals and have the potential to provide some control. So it's a distinct possibility that is what is occurring.
Right. Yeah. Just the rabbits have boomed like nuts, so.
So thank you for your comment. I appreciate, your comments and what you've noticed and sharing that. I just want to be clear that, we stay on track with the fact that the town of Nahant is not trying to solve that issue or deal with, what the population of coyotes are in our town and how that's affecting other wildlife. That's not what the Board of Selectmen and I and Dave Waddles are trying to solve here. We are simply trying to deal with the animals that are considered to be habituated or problem animals and prevent, the aggressive behavior towards our residents. Okay, so let me see, where are we here? Linda Tamfini, if you could just state your name and address. You have to unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
Hi. I'm sorry, I got on late, so I didn't hear a lot of what was going on. But
Can you just state your name and address?
oh, I'm
sir?
sorry, Linda Tanfani, 76 Fox Hill Road. I've lived here for 43 years. I agree with Miss Hall. I back up to the woods here. And we don't have any animals, but what we do have are these coyotes. And personally, I'm very scared of them. I have a small dog. Everybody on my street is the same way. Everyone I talk to say the same thing, is that they're scared. They're scared to go out. They're scared to go out at night. Personally, I think the coyotes are beautiful. And if they weren't so deadly, yeah, let them live. Let them live among us. That would be great. But, a few weeks ago, I was playing pickleball and with a bunch of other ladies, and coyotes came out onto the playground. There were kids on the playground. It's too scary. And, they're ruling us. They're ruling over us. So, you were just talking about a dominance of, I don't know what comes first, a skunk, raccoon, whatever. But when coyotes are controlling our lives, the citizens' lives, our taxpayers' lives, we can't have it. We're too small of a town. Where are they going to go next? We're surrounded by water. Are they going to swim to Spain? I don't know. Where are they going to go? They can't go to the next town. we have a 1.5 mile causeway. I know they can walk the causeway, but they just seem to be reproducing. And, you know, I'm leaving next week. I'm going to Florida. I'll be able to actually breathe. I know I'll be able to breathe because I can't breathe here. And that's just me personally, but everyone, a lot of people that I talk to feel the same way. We can't breathe. We're always looking over our shoulders. You know, we're tense all the time. You know, I'm going to go down where there's alligators. Like I said, they take care of the alligators there. If you know, we have them. They come on the golf course. They come into our residential area. You call the game warden. They come down. They take them away. You know, there's no threat. There's a very large threat here. We've lost too many pets. Pets are family members. And when I saw those, the coyotes with the children, you know, and Kelly Frary writes the same thing, you know, she's in charge of children. And she sees the coyotes all the time at the playground. It's not right.
All right, thank you, Linda. Again, you know, I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate that that residents have a fear of coyotes, a general sense of fear, and when you're afraid of something, it's justified. I'm not the town of Nahant, myself and the Board of Selectmen are not going to attempt to change, you know, what you're afraid of. We understand that there's a legitimate sense of fear. One of the most difficult things that we've had to do over the last 2 years, and Linda is one of the people that has experienced this, is explain to our residents that your fear of the coyote is not something that is going to put the town in a position to try to control the population of coyotes. Just because you're afraid of the coyote doesn't mean that the coyote is a problem. And that's been a tough thing to explain to a lot of our residents, but we've been doing it for multiple years now. What we're dealing with right now is legitimate events of aggressive behavior towards our residents. And we're trying to deal with the problem animals that are in our town. We fully expect to have coyotes in the town of Nahant moving forward, and we have to coexist with them, and our residents have to. I'm happy that there's a lot of people on, and I'm happy that we've got a lot of attention, because it's a way for us to further emphasize the importance and the responsibility of each of our residents to do the right thing when you see a coyote, and do the right thing on preventing, you know, eliminating those food sources so that it can protect you in the future or your neighbor. Again, this is not a population control effort. So I appreciate your comments, Linda. I just wanted to reiterate that. I know there are a few others that have been waiting, that have been on the list. I'm trying to get to residents first. Brendan, could you say your name and address, please?
Yep, Brendan Baronic, Olmsted, 2 Summer Street. I've been able to listen to most of the conversation, but I did step out for a little bit, so I'm sorry if this has already been covered. But I was curious if you'd looked at the about the migratory patterns, as to whether, if you use camera traps to, or at least try to understand if you've got coyotes regularly traveling from Lynn into Nahant and back and forth. Because I'm wondering if, you know, what happens if this aggressive, you know, the aggressive animal that's been, you know, observed is actually traveling in from Lynn, and it's not one of the ones that's taken up residence here in Nahant.
Dave, do you want to attempt to respond to that?
Sure. You know, coyotes have defined territories, and they defend their territories. You know, a family group will defend a territory against another family group. And so it's more than likely that there is a family group that is using Nahant proper, if you will, as its territory. And then there are family groups in Lynn. And so it's not likely that there's this traveling back and forth. I know I said it's possible before. I am assuming that the animals that are on Nahant are resident there. And keep in mind that it hasn't been just an individual that has been involved in these incidents. I don't know if it was more than one coyote that was involved in the attacks on dogs on leash in the summer, but there have been instances where there have been 5, 6 animals that have been surrounding people walking their dogs, you know, and so it's not just a single animal. So there are multiple animals in Nahant that are posing this threat. And so if there's an animal that's moving back and forth, and there's a large portion of coyote populations that don't belong to family groups. They're called transients. Essentially, it's estimated it's about 1/3 of the population. And so those could be some of those animals that are kind of just bouncing around and that are being seen moving back and forth on the causeway. But you have many animals that are resident on Nahant, and some of those are those aggressive ones.
All right, thank you, Dave. Rebecca, again, if you could state your name and address.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much. Yes, this is Rebecca Dimitrick. I'm with Humane Wildlife Control, Box 65, Moss Landing, California. I'm the one who's offered expertise in this matter to spend a week or 2 on site evaluating your coyotes and their behavior and helping the town build a progressive coyote response plan at no charge, if accepted prior to the killing. That said, listen, I think labeling these animals as aggressive or habituated, not only are these antiquated terms, we don't use those anymore, it's also premature. I think it's based also on faulty information. I have scrubbed through the entire 2022 police reports as well as social media posts. I do not see anything that could be considered a public safety threat. So I think the behavior is being misinterpreted and then possibly relayed to the state, because I don't think, Dave, that you would have been advising this extermination otherwise. So I think you've been misinformed. We're hearing so much fear from the residents, and you can see it on the social media post, and Linda was just expressing it. They're so frightened. These folks don't know how to, nor are they capable of hazing appropriately. And as Dave mentioned in one of his talks, this can lead to the coyotes in the town feeling like they're kings of the town. And that's what you're seeing. As for the attacks during summer, I want to say I scrubbed through what I could find and through the police reports, and there were 2 dogs that were lunged at. There was zero contact with, sorry about that, zero contact with the dogs, and it was right down the street from where the pups were. So this was, they were protective of their pups. They were not, it was not predatory. And that's a distinction that you must make. Also, I want to explain that the groups of the coyotes that you're mentioning that occurred in the last few months, again, these are the pups. They are following their elders. There were about 9 pups born near Furbish Road this year. Not all of them probably survived. So you have a pack of 8. The 2, the king and the queen, that are the only ones that breed, possibly 2 helpers, and the remaining pups of the year, which are the size of the adults right now. 70 to 80% of these pups will disperse. That's why you're only getting 4 reports, police reports this month so far. They're dispersing, they're leaving, they're moving off the island. To conclude, I believe that Mass Wildlife's position that they're aggressive has been based on misinformation. And I'm asking, please, Dave and your team, to reevaluate the police reports. I'd also like the department to support our plan to provide our expertise, our boots on the ground, to assess the coyotes' behavior, provide guidance to the town, to build a progressive response plan that will include lethal removal of coyotes that exhibit unacceptable aggression towards people. You're not there. I've been working with wildlife for over 40 years and nuisance wildlife for the last 12. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Katie Nolan, is it?
Yes, hi. Katie Nolan, my address is 983 Ashlot Drive, Washington, New Hampshire. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm the general campaigner at In Defense of Animals, an international organization with 250 members, 609 of whom live in Nahant and Essex County. I'm speaking on behalf of these members to respectfully urge you to reconsider your decision to hire the USDA and instead implement a long-term coyote management plan immediately so that the current family of coyotes will be spared. A non-lethal management plan has been offered free of charge, and I ask that you consider this offer. Killing these coyotes will not address the root of the problem. Wild animal-human conflicts stem from human-caused issues like improper waste disposal, land modifications, feeding of wild animals, and more, all of which are addressed by the non-lethal plan offered by coyote professionals. Again, I urge you to reconsider and implement a long-term coyote management plan immediately that is non-lethal. Planning to pursue non-lethal solutions in the future is very commendable, but it makes no difference to the current family of coyotes whose lives are at risk. Thank you again for your time and your consideration, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you, Katie. I don't have anyone else in the chat. If there's anyone else that wants to speak, please put your name in the chat or raise your hand and we'll ask you to unmute. Anna?
Yes,
Could
thank
you
you.
say your name and address,
My
please?
name is Anna Cox. I live at 57 Breezy Hill Terrace, which is also next to a ravine. So I frequently see coyotes, and when I see them, there's at least 2 at a time. Last night there was 4. So I just popped on. I didn't get a chance to hear everyone speaking, but I'm really too irritated to address the things that have been said. But I really like your decision that you made 2 weeks ago, and I listened to the whole December 8th meeting on tape, and I thought it was very thoughtful, and that the people who spoke seemed to understand. And I think it's ridiculous to be challenging Dave Waddles and saying that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's all I have to share right now.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Judith? Again, if you could state your name and address, I'm asking you to unmute now.
Hi, yes, this is Judith Murphy, 88 Little Nahant Road, and I just wanted to say that I'm in support of the recent decision, and the Board of Selectmen and Dave have done a lot to educate the people of Nahant on how to handle this. And so I respectfully disagree that we haven't been trained on how to haze properly. I have 3 little dogs, and I have to take them out one at a time on a leash in my backyard to feel comfortable. And that is not living the way we should be living in Nahant. And that's what I would like to express. So I fully am support in the recent decision.
Okay, thank you, Judith. Brendan?
Yes, I just had Brendan Bronco said 2 Summer Street, Nahant. Just a follow-up question. So have camera traps been used to monitor the causeway? And is this done on an ongoing basis?
I'm sorry, ask the question again, Brendan.
Have camera traps or some way of detecting the movement of the coyotes across the causeway? Has that been done, and like how long of a period was the monitoring done for? And is it done now?
No, that hasn't been done.
Okay.
Again, we're not. You might have missed in the beginning when I spoke, but we're not monitoring that or attempting to prevent coyotes from coming to Nahant. Mm-hmm. And we're not trying to eliminate current and future coyotes as a method of population control or nuisance control or anything of that measure. We've had substantiated reports of aggressive behavior that we've investigated, and we've shared that information with Mass Wildlife, and we're following their guidance to handle the current problem animals that we have in our community. We fully expect to have coyotes in the future, and it's our responsibility as a community to follow the guidance of the professionals, as Rebecca and Katie had mentioned. The professional guidance on how to properly haze and avoid conflict. We'll be continuing that effort. It's the main focus of our effort, and it's our responsibility to follow that. So we have not been monitoring the causeway because it doesn't really, it doesn't really fall into the efforts that we're pursuing.
Okay, thank you for the explanation.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on, one other thing, speak.
Excuse me, okay. Jeannie Baronic, 2 Summer Street, Nahant, Mass. I'm an educator and so I'd like to raise these questions. One, have the children at the Johnson School been given at least an hour of instruction on how to behave around coyotes and how to haze coyotes? Secondly, has the Council on Aging conducted workshops of at least an hour for seniors on how to haze coyotes?
So, I'd have to ask the superintendent of schools and the director of council on aging for the specifics, but I do know that it's been part of their common, it's been something that they've been talking about with their constituencies regularly over the last couple of years.
Okay, because since this is a public safety area, it's something that the schools would do. And, also to, it's really hard to change, to get rid of a fear, but, women for years have had, training in self-defense to protect themselves. And so I really think, and it takes a while and that practice, and I really think that we really need to have a more stepping up of it, an active area in this. And so to see if we can build and get rid of that fear and involve psychologists, and perhaps the people from Moss Landing could help us in that area. Because if there are going to be around, this fear is going to be around and you're going to have to deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Mike Luch, I'm asking you to unmute now if you can announce your name and address.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate all your help. I'm just curious if Dave would comment on what the women from the IDA had talked about.
Okay, Dave?
Is there something in particular that you would like me to comment about?
Yeah, just that, let me think about that for a second, that you're misinformed in your investigations, and you're not coming to the same conclusions, and you don't, and they're disagreeing with you that they're aggressive.
I would contend that 6 animals circling someone as they're trying to watch their dog displays aggression. I would contend that that does pose a public safety threat. And if they disagree with that, that's fine. I don't know what they would require to occur before they would declare something to be a public safety threat. Is it someone being attacked by a coyote? Is it someone being bitten in one of these circumstances? These animals are displaying aggressive behavior, a complete lack of fear of people. And it is to protect public safety that these recommendations have come from the division. If we were to get these sorts of responses or this sort of information from another town, we would make the same recommendations. It is contrary to what we tell every single town and every single individual we work with in Massachusetts with coyotes on a daily basis. We teach the coexistence. We teach that they have to learn to live with coyotes. But when it poses a public safety threat, we are going to allow and recommend that the animals are lethally removed to remove that public safety threat.
All right, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I don't really want to get into a debate over who's right and who's wrong. I appreciate your comments, Dave, and I appreciate the question from Mike. I'll add that the town of Nahant has investigated, and beyond just what you'd find in police reports, these are follow-up conversations that either myself, selectmen, the animal control officer, police officers who have all, been guided and educated from Mass Wildlife on what questions to ask. We've investigated, I can't even put a number on how many different, reports have come in that we've investigated, but I'll say that the bulk of those have resulted in, educating the resident as to why that wasn't really an aggressive behavior. So, the comment that, that we are, surfacing to Mass Wildlife, exaggerated claims, is not exactly accurate. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We've actually vetted out a lot of those exaggerated claims. I'm not saying that they don't occur. And a lot of the reason why they occur is because residents are, maybe misinformed and, have that sense of fear. But Mass Wildlife has guided us on how to, filter through those. And so the recent ones that have occurred that are substantiated, we have elevated to Mass Wildlife. But we have called out a lot of the ones that did not meet that level. Renee?
Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could say your name and address.
Yeah, so Renee Secor from Project Coyote, carnivore conservation advocate with Project Coyote. I live in Stanfordville, New York. So your neighbor, but thank you, thank you so much for providing this overview of, all this that the city has done in terms of public education and outreach to work towards coexistence. I really do appreciate those efforts. And Project Coyote has, provided public education in the past, like you mentioned, and we will commit to continuing to doing that because, we want to ensure that Nahant residents are able to foster coexistence with all their wildlife, including their resident coyote population, right? That just has just as much a right to kind of exist in this increasingly crowded world that we're living in. So I would just mention, and I would reiterate a bit of what Rebecca was saying, that, I'm not sure that the behavior, or I'm certain that the behavior that has been reported and kind of relayed tonight can be remediated with a non-lethal response. And I would say that, a non-lethal kind of intensive and comprehensive non-lethal response here is what we would require before you turn to this lethal response. I think that there's still an opportunity for high intensity hazing kind of directed at these nuisance animals, showing human habituation, which is what, part of what, Rebecca is recommending in her plan. And so we would urge you to consider that before turning to this lethal strategy. And yeah, I know we're short on time, so I'll just leave kind of the comments at that, but that would be a summary of where kind of our stance is our organization.
Okay, thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Peter Barba, you are the last speaker here.
Can't listen.
Pete Barber, 22 Emerald Road. Just a question to our experts, or I guess I'll call them out-of-town experts. What are these non-lethal measures that you're suggesting we take with these aggressive animals? And I do know of personal, relatives that have had very serious interactions with coyotes. So, I believe that there are aggressive coyotes. So what are the non-lethal ways to handle this?
So this citizens forum is really an opportunity for you to speak to the board and the town officials. It's not really a open mic session for interaction back and forth amongst, those who are here in citizens forum. I appreciate the question, Peter. I'm sure that the professionals that are on tonight would be happy to answer that. And I think I have some of their emails and I can connect the two of you. It's certainly something that they've already spoken with Dave Waddles about, and we'll be following up with that as well. Those techniques and those recommendations are things that the town is interested in. As I said, we're going to be continuing to coexist with coyotes in the future. So what we're dealing with today is certainly not the end. So those, I hope that those professionals, remain committed to our community and, consider assisting us in the future as we continue to coexist with our new neighbors here in town. Okay, any members of the select board have any comments before we sign off?
No, I have none.
I'll just say thanks everyone for your questions and comments. And very quickly, the topic of coyotes can be an emotional issue, and people have strong opinions on both sides. Some of the discourse I've seen on Facebook on this topic in particular has been less than civil, and I just want everyone to remember that we share this little community and we're all neighbors, and I hope we can express our opinions respectfully.
And I would just second that, Josh. Well said. Again, as you said, Tony, the decision we came to is not an easy one.
It's hard to hear you. I think it's.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I agree with Josh. I haven't been happy with the comments that have been going on social media. So I hope we all can respect each other, even if we have differences of opinions on this. This decision was not an easy one to come to. I view my responsibility first and foremost for public safety, and that's the basis of my decision. And, hopefully we can learn something from this and improve in the future. And I want to thank everybody for participating, and thank you for putting this together, Tony.
Hey, thank you. Thank you both, and thank you all. And Tony, in particular, thank you for putting this across so succinctly and so incorporated. It's really a outstanding job in doing it. And well, not just tonight, but over the last couple of years that I've been on the board. You've really done it. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Go ahead.
Move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Roll call vote.
Josh Hantrum, aye.
Mark on aye.
Hey, happy holidays, guys. Gene Canty, aye.
Hey, everyone.
Happy holidays. Good night. Thank you all.
Thanks, Tony.